What's going on, guys? Zach here, and welcome to our fourth installment on our multiplayer shooter game in GameMaker Studio. And today what we're going to look at is creating a shooting system for our game, along with just a quick bug, or not really a bug, but something that we haven't done yet, which is our client disconnecting. Alright, so this is going to be sort of a complex one because we're adding in the main feature, which is our shooting system, into the game. So right off the bat though, let's go ahead and do the disconnecting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the server from our last episode. Let's just add in a quick name here. And another one. Alright, so as you can see, we've got our two players in the game and everything is good. One quick thing though, you'll notice is that if our player here exits out the game, that object was never deleted, so it's still in the game. And we want to delete that if a player disconnects. Alright, so we're just going to get right into it. This is not too hard to do. I'm going to create a new constant, and let's insert one here. And this is going to be message leave. Alright, let's bring that down one, and I'm going to have the be 3. Alright, on the server side, this will be all on the server side because we want to delete that server client. On our server handle disconnect, what we're going to do is we're just going to create that message. So we're going to say buffer seek, send buffer seek start at 0, and then we're just going to write out on our send buffer buffer u8, and here we're going to put in our message leave, and then here we are just going to put in the client that is leaving, it's buffer u16, and here I'm going to say client map string socket id dot client id. And then we're going to have to send that data. So with O server client network send raw self dot socket id, if I can type today, other dot send buffer, and buffer tell other dot send buffer. So we've been using these methods a lot with our server client, our network send, and our buffer write, so I'm not going to be explaining them as much, especially when we get more complex into the code. So basically on disconnect, we are sending the message ID, and we're also sending which client is actually leaving the game, so we can delete that object accordingly. So that gets sent to the client. So here in our client handle message, under our join, we're going to say case message leave, which again only gets called if we disconnect through the server. And here we sent the client, so buffer read buffer u16, and then we'll just say temp object equals buffer, or I'm sorry, client, if I can really type today, get object client. And then all we say is with temp object instance destroy. Alright, so that should be it. Let's go ahead and compile the game just to make sure that worked. Online builds. And we'll run the game. So we'll create the server, and we'll join the server with Zach, and we'll create another guy here, Bob. And now, as you can see, we're moving around, and if we exit out, on this side, that object was now deleted. So cool, it works exactly what we wanted to do. Just to clarify again, what we're doing is in our server handle disconnect, we're writing out our message leave, and we're writing out the client that is leaving. That gets transferred to the client scripts. And then client handle message. First thing we do is read that message ID, which we sent first, and then we read the client. We grab that client with client get object script that we made in the last episode, and just with that object, just destroy it. So pretty simple. Now let's get into the bread and butter of this tutorial. So the shooting system, the very key of our game, because we're making a multiplayer shooter game. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna cast pretty much ray casts, and we're gonna do this by using collision line. And ray cast basically is an instant bullet, so it creates an instant line between wherever you are and the destination that you're shooting at. And the reason we're doing this and not creating individual bullet objects is because that is a whole other complexity of code. That is, being able to sync everything together, and on your client side it may have looked like you hit them, but on the other client side it may have looked like you completely missed. So what we're going to do with collision detection, and especially the shooting system, is we're going to leave it completely up to the server. So the server is going to do all the collision detection, and the client is just sort of the visual for it. So the server is going to do all of the mathematical arguments and everything like that to check whether we've hit our other guy or if we haven't, if we've missed him. So what does the client send to the server? So what we're going to do is, we're going to always start with the server side, but let's just check what the client sends to the server, just so we can kind of get a ballpark, and I think it's a little bit easier to understand. So what we're going to do is we're going to send the message ID message shoot, which we're going to create another constant for. And so every time we click with our mouse, we're going to send that ID message shoot, and then we're going to send the direction that we're shooting in. So that's all we're sending to the server, and then the server will just take it up from there, right? So what does the server send to the clients? Now this gets a little bit more complex. So we want to check if we've hit the object or not. That's the first thing we want to send, using a constant message hit and message miss. All right. So if we have hit the other client, then what we want to do is send a message indicating we've hit them. We want to send the client ID that shot the bullet. We want to send the client ID that has been shot by the bullet. We want to send the shooting direction, and we want to send the progress of our bullet or our ray cast. Because what we want to do is when we send a ray cast and we make a visual line representing that, we want to stop that ray cast where we hit them. Obviously, we don't want the bullet to go all the way through the player. So to do this, we need to cut our raycast line into segments. So let me go ahead and go into Paint here. Maybe this will make more sense. Alright, so here we are, and here's our player, right? And what we do is we're sending just basically this line. This line represents the raycast. So whenever we shoot, it's an instant line if our mouse was here. Alright, and then if we shot here, boom, here, boom, right? But now let's say, for example, we have, it's a little bit bigger, our other client connected, and we want to shoot him. Well, if we don't set the raycast segments or line into segments, we could possibly shoot him, but depending on our range of our bullet, it could shoot him and still go right through. So we want to eliminate that by just shooting like that. But if we do miss, we want to still have that full range. Okay, so what we're going to do is, let's say for example we shoot here. That is our raycast. Just by using a for loop, or which we're going to use a while loop, we can cut this line into segments of, say, 10 pixels. Obviously this is not precise. In other words, so if our, and the depth will be lower, so if our if we got hit, let's say right here, that line would stop there. Even if we got hit here, and these segments are going to be a lot smaller, so you would never get something like this. But let's say, for example, that it was bigger, it would stop here. But since the depth is lower, that is what you would see right there. And then the rest over here would be hogwash, right? So it would look like you're still hitting them even though we've segmented the line. All right, I hope that makes sense. Now, in order to actually send specific client objects that we want to say, for example, if we did hit that object, we want to send back which object got hit, we need to have a better ID system. So right when a client connects, we're going to call another message called message get ID, and we'll make that a constant. So here I'll insert it. So message get ID, and we'll name that 4. And what we're going to do on our server is in our server handle connect, we're going to send that message. So buffer seek send buffer buffer seek start 0, and then we're going to say buffer write send buffer. We're going to send the ID, so buffer u8, and message get ID. And then we need to send which client we want to ID. So we're going to say buffer u16, and we're going to say l.clientID, because we had initially called this L variable oserver client. We can actually make that a variable. All right, and then we can send the data. So network send raw socket ID send buffer, and buffer tell send buffer. All right, so now we're sending that ID. Now in our client script, in our client connect, we want to set something to say my client ID equals -1, just so the variable exists. And then in client handle message, we'll just put it at the top, case message get ID. And here all we're going to say is my client ID equals buffer read buffer buffer u16. So now we can use this my client ID. Now in client get object, we're just going to add to this script, and we're going to say if client ID equals my client ID. In other words, this is myself. We're going to say return oPlayer.id. And let's just make sure, let's just do like a fail-safe method. We'll say if instance exists, or if it doesn't exist, oPlayer, just so in the off chance we get some sort of error, we're just going to create that player, and then it'll return it. We'll just set it at 0, 0. All right. So now that we have that, now we can actually get to the system. So we're always going to start on the server side. So server handle message. Let's create 3 more constants. We're going to say message shoot is 5, message hit 6, and message miss is 7. All right. So now on our server handle message, we're going to say case message shoot. And whenever the client shoots, it's going to send this message shoot to the server with some data. And that data will be our shoot direction. So here I could say variable shoot direction equals buffer read buffer u16. And we're going to make this a u16 because I believe that let's see here. The buffer unsigned 8 only goes to 255, and 360 degrees is more than 255. So it could, because we can shoot 260 degrees. So we need to go up to buffer U16, which can hold 65,535, which is more than we need, but we have to use it, unfortunately. And just to make this a little bit simpler, I'm going to put this into a script because this is going to be sort of long. So let's create another script, and I'm going to name this server handle shoot. Server handle shoot. And here I want the shoot direction and our client object. So here I'm going to say shoot direction equals argument 0. I'm just going to call it temp object so it's not confusing, equals argument 1. And then inside here we can say server handle shoot, and we're going to put in our shoot direction and our client object, which we created right here. Client object. Alright. So just so you don't get confused, we're going to do it this way just so you can kind of understand where we're going with this. In our client script, we're going to create a new script called client send shoot. Client send shoot. And this is going to have the variable of our shoot direction that we sent. So var dir equals argument 0. And we're going to buffer seek our send buffer. Buffer seek start at 0. And then we're going to say buffer write send buffer U8. We've got to send the message, so we're going to send that message shoot. And then buffer write send buffer U16, which is our direction. And then we're going to send it. So our send buffer tell send buffer, just like that. So you may ask yourself and get confused, where are we sending this script? Like, when are we calling this script? So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our client object, and here again is where we're going to create or call all of our networking events. And we're going to add an event, mouse, global mouse, and I'm going to say write pressed. And in here, we're going to say var dir equals, and we have to round it because it needs to be an integer, point direction, oplayer.x, oplayer.y, at our mouse x and our mouse y. And then we can say client send shoot dir. So every time we write press on the screen, we're sending that data. So then this data gets sent to the server, our shoot and our direction. And then the server picks that up on our handle message. Okay, we're shooting. We've read our shoot direction. And now we're going to go into our server handle shoot script with that information of the shoot direction. All right. So what we're going to do in our server handle shoot script, so this is going to get a little bit more complex and less server side and client side rather than just creating this system. And now this by all means is not the only way to do it. If you want to do it a different way that you've thought of, then I would say go for it. But this is just how we're going to do it. All right, so we're going to need two more variables. And this is going to be hit equals false, and this is only going to go true if we've seen a collision with the other object. And we're going to need obj, and this is going to equal no one. And the obj is going to return the object that we've hit. So right now, right off the bat, we want it to equal nobody. All right. So here I'm going to create a couple variables. prx, which is called stands for previous x. this is going to equal to temp object.x, pry equals temp object.y. Our progress is going to equal 0, and this progress variable is just like I was talking about with this. So this would be 1, 2, 3 progress, 4 progress, etc. And we're just going to loop that up. Our 2x is going to equal our previous x, and our 2y is going to equal our previous y. These are just starting variables right off the bat that we want to create. Now remember, make sure, I know some people are having some problems before, make sure these are commas. When we're creating variables and we want to create a lot of variables, we space them out with commas, not semicolons. Alright, so here we're going to say with temp object, and we're going to need like a shooting range for our weapon. So let's create another constant actually. Let's add one, and we'll bring it up here next to update speed, and we'll say shoot range. And this is going to equal, I don't know, 600. Want to bring it 600 pixels out. So we're going to create a while loop. So while our progress is less than our shoot range, we're going to loop it. Alright, and here we can say our 2x equals our prx plus, and we're going to be using the length_dir functions, x. If you don't know about the length_dir functions, then go ahead and look that up. It's pretty simple. And here we're going to want to chunk it into segments. So this can be however small segments you want, or however big. So I'm going to put it into 10 pixels each. And by segments, I mean these are going to be 10 pixels of segments. So if you really wanted precision, you would do like 1. But that's just sort of unnecessary. So here I'm going to say our shoot direction, our 2y equals pry plus length_dir y at 10 and shoot direction. Alright, and now we're going to generate that raycast. So I'm going to say obj equals, and this is a variable that we created up here, collision line at our prx, pry, our 2x, our 2y, and our objects, we want to check for all objects in the game. Precision is going to be false, and not me is going to be true because we don't want it to return us. So what this collision line does is it actually returns the object that it goes through. So the object that it hits will return that object. So that's really handy because now we can say if instance exists obj, then we can comment in here that we have a hit. Because if nothing exists, it'll equal no one. That means we didn't hit anybody. So here we can just say hit equals true. And let's bring our progress plus equals 10. And also we want to break the loop if we've hit somebody. We don't want to keep progressing. So now we can say prx equals 2x, pry equals 2y, and our progress plus equals 10. So if we don't hit, then our prx is going to equal what our 2x is, and then it's going to keep segmenting on. That should make sense. Alright, cool. So now we can go down here. Let me just make some room. And here, if we say if hit, else that. So this code right here, if we've hit an object, and if our bullet has missed an object. And we're going to send the data accordingly. Alright. So here, we're going to say buffer seek, send buffer, buffer seek start at 0 alignment, or offset, I'm sorry. And here again, we want to send the message that we've hit somebody. We want to send the ID of the object that has shot. We want to send the ID of the object that has been shot. If we want to set the shoot direction, and we want to send the progress. So we can all transfer that over to the other screen. So buffer write, send buffer, buffer U8, message hit, and we're going to say buffer write, send buffer, buffer U16, and here we're going to say temp object dot client underscore ID. Then we're going to say buffer write, send buffer, buffer U16, and this is going to be obj dot client ID, and then buffer write, send buffer, buffer U16, our shoot direction, and buffer write, send buffer, buffer U16, our progress. All right, then let's send it. So with O server client, network send raw, self.socket ID, other.send buffer, buffer tell, other.send buffer. And we can pretty much just copy this and put it down for the mist. Because in here, we just want to get rid of our obj client ID because we haven't shot anybody. And we're going to change this to message miss. And there we go. On our server handle message, there's a couple things I want to change here. First off, because all of our collision detection is going to be sort of calculated on the server side, we want to, with our O server client, give it a sprite because for collision detection purposes, and we want to just set that x and y coordinate to what our client's x and y coordinate is. So I'm going to say client object.x equals xx, client object.y equals yy. In our client handle message script as well, what I want to change is this with O server client, because beforehand, before we change this with our motion interpolation, we were sending data, and now we're not sending any data, we're just reading it, so this actually serves no purpose. So you can leave it in there, you can take it out, you can do whatever, but we don't need it. So now that we're in our client, let's create the case message hit and our case message miss. So we're going to create a couple variables, just reading from what we actually wrote from the server side just a minute ago. We're going to say client shoot ID equals buffer read, buffer U16, and we're going to say client shoot equals client get object, client shoot ID. And then we're going to say client shot ID equals buffer read, buffer U16, and our client shot variable equals client get object, client shot ID. And again, make sure these are commas. We're also going to want to get the shoot direction variable. So shoot direction equals buffer read, buffer U16, and our progress. We'll call it shoot length equals buffer read, buffer U16. So now we are getting all the data. Now we can use this data. Let's copy this and put it for our miss. And in here, all we need is we can get rid of the client shot ID. We just need to know the shoot ID, the shoot length, the shoot direction, etc. What I want to do also in our hit is I want to create two more variables, hit underscore x. And I want to equal this to we're gonna clamp it, and we're gonna clamp our client shoot.x plus our length dir underscore x shoot length, and our direction is our shoot direction, and the minimum is client shoot.x, and the maximum is client shoot.x plus 16 because we centered the origin. What we're doing here is we're just clamping sort of where the bullet hits, so that on the client side it always looks like it hits, even though with any sort of lag and the motion interpolation, if on the client side it's like, oh, that just skimmed by me, it didn't hit me. Well, this clamping will say, okay, if it hit on the server side, we're going to make it look like it hit on the client side, because it's still going to have collision detection. So I'm going to say hit y equals clamp client, and I don't know why I did a underscore there. Client shoot.x plus, or I'm sorry, .y plus length dir y, shoot length, shoot direction, client shoot.y, client shoot.y plus 16. All right. So now technically this all works. What we're going to do now is create the visual for it, which is going to create that actual bullet that goes streaming across the screen. So what I'm going to do is in our util folder, I'm going to create o shoot line object, and this is just going to be what gets created when we shoot that line, the bullet. And we're going to make it fade away as well. So let's go ahead and say create a couple variables in the create event. So x0 equals 0, y0 equals 0, x1 equals 0, y1 equals 0, and then fade equals 1. So this is just going to be the starting position of our x and the end position of our x, starting position of our y, and end position of our y. So here in the step event, I can say fade minus equals, we'll say 1 divided by room speed multiplied by 0.3, we'll do 7. And if fade is less than or equal to 0, then instance destroy. Alright, then we can just draw this line. We'll set the alpha, so draw set alpha, fade. We'll set the color, draw set color, see yellow, and we'll draw the line. So x0, y0, x1, y1, and then we'll set the color back to see white, and set the alpha back to 1. Alright, and then let's just create a very simple script called create shoot line. And here, we'll say create shoot line, and this script is just going to create the line. So in here we'll just say x0, y0, x1, y1, and we'll say var l equals instance create 0, 0, o shoot line, o shoot line, there we go, and l dot x0 equals argument 0, and so on. Copy this, say y0, x1, and y1. So So this is just to make it easy so that in these scripts we can go ahead and just create those things. All right. So in our server handle shoot, we want to just always create this line on the server so we can visually see it on the server, because again, the server is doing the collision detection. So we could say create shoot line, and here we could just say x, y, 2x, and 2y. And we can do x and y because we're in our with temp object script here. All right, and then on the client, right here, we can do it again. So right here, I'm going to say create shoot line, and this is on our hit. So we're going to say client shoot.x, client shoot.y, then our hit x, and our hit y. And I just realized that this needs to be shot. But just those. These right here you want to keep at client shoot, because we want to bring our client create shoot line from our client shoot.x and y to our client shot.hit x and y. That wouldn't make sense to just bring it back to yourself. And then in our miss, we're going to say create shoot line, and here I'm going to say client shoot.x, client shoot.y, and then we just need to use the length dir functions. So client shoot.x plus length dir x, shoot length, and our shoot direction, and client shoot.y plus length dir y, shoot length, and shoot direction. And we can sort of make this look better. Oh, and then it looks like we're getting an error here in our shoot line. Make sure that these arguments are like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and compile the game. All right, we'll run it. We'll create the server. We'll join the server. Make the name Zach. And as you can see now, on our server side, that client shoot is now going with us. So now if we right click, oh sweet, cool. We have a line being drawn, but it looks like it's going from the top left. Let me make sure I center that. Nope, we did not center the origin. Let's make sure we center that origin. So let's run it again, or compile it again. All right, we'll run it. So we'll create the server. We'll join the server with Zach. All right, so now cool. Let's create another client. Bob. So you can see Bob. And if we hit Bob, we get an error. Shoot length in our client handle message. So let's see here in our client handle message. I put shoot underscore length instead of shoot length. That'll do it right there. Make sure when you guys get errors like that, that it's not something simple, because you know I can't be in all of your guys' source code and just constantly be looking for simple grammatical errors like that. So make sure you're really looking at the error log and sort of diagnosing it and figuring it out for yourself. All right, so let's go ahead and create another server here. We'll join the server, name Zach, and we'll join it again, and we'll name it Bob. Get them all here. So as you can see, on both sides we see this, and if we hit it, as you can see, how cool is that? So if we, as you can see, the raycast goes way past it on both sides, but if we hit it, it stops, which is exactly what we wanted. So let's go on this side too, and ba 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 ba. We're now shooting. There's just a tiny bit, maybe if you hit the corners. But again, you could see kind of like where I go here, and if I go a little bit to the right, it clamps it. So if we go on our server here, we check out the server, as you can see, if we hit the corner, as you can see, it looks like on our client side that we're hitting the middle, but on the actual server side, we're just hitting the corner, but that's okay because it's still automatically hitting, and that's what our clamp does. Awesome. So let's add one more thing to this tutorial before we go. And that's going to be where we can actually send data so that we can look around, like our sprites send direction. And like so on each side we can see what direction the other player's facing at. So let's create that script, or the sprite, I'm sorry. And I don't know, I'm just gonna make a quick sprite here. Whoops. There we go. Let's make it look like that. And then maybe if we there we go. Copy this, and on our other client, whoops, paste it, and then we'll make it like red. So this is pretty simple to send. We're not actually going to send it server side because we don't need to. Nobody's going to be looking at the server side. That's also why we don't use motion interpolation on the server side. Nobody's looking at it. So what we're going to do is on our server, in our handle message, we're going to also read dir equals buffer read buffer u16 because we can be in 360 degrees, and then we're going to write it out. So buffer write send buffer u16 and dir. So that writes it out, and this is in our message move. So in our client send movement, we're going to send that movement. So buffer write send buffer u16. We're going to round it, and we're going to say o player dot image angle. And then our client handle message, let's read it. So dir equals buffer read buffer u16, and then down here, and we could use motion interpolation with this, but we're just going to send the raw data to it for now. So you could animate it though. Actually, I challenge you guys to do that. Angle equals dir. And then in our step event of, where should we do it? In our client, in the step event. Yeah, actually, let's do it in the player. Makes more sense because all of our movement is there. So image angle equals round point direction. I guess we already rounded it, but we'll do it again anyways. At x, y, mouse underscore x, mouse underscore y. All right, let's compile it. And and run it. So I'm going to create server. I'm going to join the server, Zach. And as you can see, now we have like a guy that can move around, point towards our mouse. Let's add another guy. We'll name it Bob. And so in this one, as you can see on both sides, we can see the direction that we're now shooting. So we'll go over here, bah, 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 bah. And now we have a cool shooting system in our game. So thank you guys for watching. Go leave a like, go and subscribe. Let's go ahead and try for 200 likes again. And go ahead and follow me on Twitter because I'm putting up polls for whatever you want to see next in it. We can add grenades, we can add AI, we can add robot AI. We can do a lot of things with this game. So go leave a like, go and subscribe. Visit Cody Made Simple to learn more, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.